Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Doug, will you call the roll, please?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado. Yes. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn. Present. Commissioner Arp. Here. Commissioner Gilmetti. Commissioner Guardino. Present. Commissioner Kehoe. Here. Commissioner Tavaloni. Commissioner Madaffer. Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Here. Chair Inman.
Here.
Senator Bell. Assemblymember Frazier. Okay. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We're going to begin today with item number 28, which informational reports. Terry, I think you're up.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Items number 28 through 37 are informational items deemed by staff to not raise any issues, and therefore individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner. Please note that there are a few minor changes on 3 items as noted on the change list.
Move for approval.
This is an information item? Yeah, thank you though. Oh, we appreciate it. So we approve the information, thank you. Okay, now we need to go to item number 43. We pulled that off the consent calendar yesterday, and Commissioner Madaffer.
Move for approval.
Not here. Time out, guys. We're going to present the item, or do you just do you describe it, Terry?
Okay. Commissioners, item number 43 is a department action item requesting approval of 21 director's deeds. Staff has reviewed these deeds and finds that they are in the best interest of the state and recommends commission approval.
My motion stands.
A motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We went through the consent calendar yesterday, so it looks to me like we go to item 49, and Garth, that would be you.
Yes, Commissioners, tab 49 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Hazel Avenue widening project in Sacramento County. The final EIR determined that the impacts related to traffic and circulation would be significant and unavoidable. The Sacramento County Board of Supervisors adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends the Commission accept the final EIR, findings of significant impact, and statement of overriding considerations, and approve this project for consideration of funding.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item number 50, Garth.
Tab 50 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the U.S. Highway 101 Managed Lanes projects in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. Caltrans certified the environmental impacts were mitigated to less than significant levels. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Guardino, a second by Commissioner Gilmetti. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 51, Garth.
Tab 51 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Everport Terminal Berth Efficiency and Emission Reduction Project in Los Angeles County. The final EIR determined that the impacts related to air quality, biological and cultural resources, and greenhouse gas emissions would be significant and unavoidable. The Board of Commissioners adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends the Commission accept the final EIR, findings of significant impact, and the statement of overriding considerations, and approve this project for further consideration of funding.
Do I have a motion? Second. I have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Is there discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 52, Terry.
Commissioners, number 52 is a department action item requesting approval of 2 airspace leases with the City of Oakland for emergency shelter and feeding program purposes. Recently signed legislation, Assembly Bill 3139, and the Governor's signing message allow the department to lease certain properties for $1 a month if the properties are used to provide homeless services. Although these leases are legislated, the lease rate does not constitute the fair market lease rate required by commission resolution. There is a pink replacement item in your packet for this one. There are a few minor changes to the lease terms, and there was one additional change that's not reflected on that pink that you should be aware of. The annual administrative fee for this should read $500 for each site. The leases are in the best interest of the state, and the approval requires a unanimous vote by the commission. Staff has reviewed this item and recommends commission approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, and I think I heard a second first from Commissioner Alvarado. So any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 53.
Okay. Commissioners, number 53 is a department action item requesting approval of an airspace lease with the City of San Jose for emergency shelter and feeding program purposes. This one is similar to the previous item. There is a pink replacement item for this, and included in those changes, it should have stated that the lease, this particular lease was legislated in Senate Bill 519. So that is reflected and that is attached to your packet. In addition, the lease terms were corrected, and again, one additional change should be reflected on what you're looking at. The annual administrative fee is $500. So this lease is also in the best interest of the state, and the approval requires a unanimous vote by the commission. Staff has reviewed this and recommends commission approval.
Move approval.
Have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 50, let's see, we're going to 54 now, Terry,
Okay.
right?
Commissioners, number 54 is a department action item requesting approval to directly negotiate a long-term airspace lease with Emeryville Transportation Management Association, a nonprofit organization. The proposed subject lease area is a 115,000 square foot, undeveloped, irregularly shaped parcel under Interstate 580 in the city of Oakland. The parcel is located between Mandela Parkway and Hannah Street. Staff has reviewed this item and recommends commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second I heard first from Commissioner Alvarado. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Now we will go to item 55. Lori.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 55 is a department information item. It is the Active Transportation Program Status Report, and you should have received this as a yellow. The report would have been sent to you as a yellow item. And Ray Zhang from Caltrans Local Assistance will present the report.
Madam Chair, could I just, we
Yes.
just got this report, so can I just ask that we have an opportunity to review this report, and maybe if they want to have a more expansive presentation, they can come back in January?
I would agree, and I think we'll have it. Let's let Ray have that, but I think that's definitely going to be probably the feeling, because I also had the same thing when it's such an important program for us that we really need to. So let's do the presentation first, and then we'll jump in. Okay. I guess what we're saying is maybe you can do a briefer presentation this morning, because the consensus is probably going to be that we need to spend time and need to get these reports earlier. So, and we also have public comments. So go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ray Zhang, Caltrans Division Chief of Local Assistance. So this presentation will be pretty brief, and I totally agree that we should give the Commissioners time to review the report, so I'll be prepared to come back to give a more in-depth report. And then today, after this one, if we have any questions, I'll definitely take that back, and so the staff can work on that, and we can work with the commission staff on that. So, so the report, we recently submitted a report, so I'm just doing a highlight of the presentation. So, do I have that one? So the ATP program was established in 2013 by SB 99 with the primary goal of increased use of active modes of transportation. And as the goals include increased biking and walking trips, increased safety and mobility for biking and walking, and also to make sure the disadvantaged community get to share the benefit of the program, to enhance public health, and to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So far, the Commission have programmed 3 cycles of the ATP. This include the cycle, this 3 augmentation to include funding from the SB1. So after cycle 1, there's 276 project. ATP investment was $368 million, and that include so the total investment is about a little over $1 billion. And as after cycle 2, the program grew to be 483 projects with $727 million of ATP investment, and a total investment about $1.9 billion. And after cycle 3, including the SB1 investment, the program grew to be 720 projects and a total investment of ATP about $1.2 billion. And that leveraged another about 1.7 of investment from other funding sources. So this is a monumental investment in the active transportation. As this chart shows, it's going to result in the construction of many active transportation facilities, like different classes of bike paths, improvement in sidewalks, and also crosswalks. ATP also made investment in the active transportation program and plans that encourages and the active transportation mode, and also plans that will encourage active transportation. We have, beginning in November of 2017, we started receiving project progress reports. If you remember, last March, we made a first report to the Commission, because that was the first time we are reporting on the progress report. At that time, the reporting compliance rate was pretty low. And since then, we have worked very closely with the Commission staff and also with the local agencies and with the help of the RTPA group, the League of Cities and SEAC, and also the hard work by the local agencies. We have seen significant improvement in the compliance rate of local agencies submitting their report. So May, the reporting compliance rate was at 97%. And the September report was at 98%. So just a quick analysis on the report they report on the schedule and the cost and the project scope. So this chart briefly summarizes for the schedule, about 40% of the projects reporting, they were on or ahead of schedule. And about 42% reporting that they were a little bit behind schedule, and there was some also did not report on their the progress in their report. So the next item is about the project scope. Most of the project are 94% of the project are delivering within the scope, and about 6% of the project they'll have experienced some scope change. Some of these scope changes, are submitted to the Commission for approval, like major changes or the minor changes. We work with your staff in getting those approved, and some are still pending the review and approval for the scope change. And we have, Where did that go? We have started receiving project completion reports from Cycle 1 and a few of the Cycle 2 projects. This chart shows, so most of the project completion report received are from Cycle 1, and a two from Cycle 2 projects. And it shows most of them are, almost all of them were completed within the original budgets. And again, the scheduled delivery, it was about half of them were delivered around that original scheduled time. So the next slide shows, some of the preliminary analysis of the outcome, and this is focused on the before and after count of the project. Of the increase in biking and walking trips. So the first chart shows, the one that I highlighted in green that's showing there are some kind of increase in the before and after count. And so for the biking trips, we see about 61% are showing reporting in their final report an increase. On the walking side, about 65% of the project reported back as showing an increase. So, and it's, this is one of the measures that we looked at. So, when you look at this chart.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Is it
of
okay
course.
if I ask a quick question while we're on this slide?
Sure.
Or would you?
Yeah.
Thank you. If we could put that slide back up, please. In the left-hand column, you show a slide, and we're not seeing it now, but you showed a slide that either had no increase or a decrease. Mm-hmm. For future presentations, it will certainly help me to know, to break that out between no increase and a decrease, and it would be really helpful to understand why something in an active transportation program would lead to a decrease in active transportation.
Yeah, and I was going to go through some of the point that observations that we made in looking at this thing. It's like, so when you have another question, Chair?
No, I'm just going to say I don't want to get too far into details because it's very clear to me that we're going to want to really get into the details. This is a very important program for all of us. We've just spent the better part of 2 days really focusing on our transportation sector and our greenhouse gas reduction, and this program affords opportunities, and we really want to understand what accomplishments, what tweaks we need to do. Safety is a primary concern for our transportation family, first and foremost, so we're going to have more time, and we realize that. So let's do this justice in terms of really understanding. So with that, I think I'm going to ask you, we can read the slides, but I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, and then we'll see. I expect that we'll have a motion to work on this a little later. Yes, Commissioner Gometti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question on that slide number 8. We're on cycle 1. It shows projects delivered on schedule 46%. Is that because cycle 1 was new and people were just trying to adjust to the program?
I believe so. If you recall, in cycle 1, we have quite a few projects that come in for time extension.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part where, after we made some adjustment, we have seen some of that improvement in cycle 2 and cycle 3 allocation, and we have a section.
So that was just the first one out of the chute?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have any other comments from my fellow commissioners? Do I have a recommendation of, we want to bring this back at our next hearing? Okay, I think we'll all hold them. We may need to do a workshop. We're going to need our lead staff, Lori, who's been living and breathing this program 24/7. for the last, since its birth, I believe, or at least close to it. And so I think there's a lot of work we all want to do collectively on this. So I don't know, Susan, do we need a motion to bring it back, or what do you want us, how do you want us to handle that?
Commissioners, you can certainly make a motion to defer and bring it back in January at your pleasure, or you can just simply let us know you're deferring the item.
If I may, this isn't
Mitch, do
noticed
you
as an
have-
action item.
Oh,
So
okay.
your
Yeah,
direction
so
is
we need
adequate.
a motion from you to defer it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by,
Madam Chair, this
Yeah.
is not an action item, so we cannot take any action
Oh,
on
it's
it.
not? I thought you said it was an
No, it's
action.
not.
oh,
an
it's
It's not
not.
an action.
Okay,
Taking
then
action
we'll,
would not be appropriate.
I think, Susan, you've got the gist of your,
I do,
board.
and Commissioners, so we're working on a January workshop the day before, and so we can allow, ample time to have a discussion on this, and you'll have time to read the report thoroughly, so.
Well,
I think
move
there
that
may be
we
enough
don't take any
questions.
action on this.
yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the day before, how to do that, because I think that a lot of work we need to do together collectively on this. So we can talk and make something happen here. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now up to item 56.
There were speaker cards.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did have a speaker, and I've got to respect the public, and I've managed to put my speaker card. So, speakers, do you still want to come forward now, the public? I have public speakers on this. I have 4 speaker cards: Patricia Chin, Linda. I think maybe these came from yesterday and those folks have gone home. Okay, did I have any speakers on this item that are still here today that wish to speak? Please come forward.
Good morning. I'm actually speaking for Patricia Chen. She couldn't come back today. My name is Shelley Kwan, and I'm with LA Metro. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment. We just wanted to express how grateful we are for all the effort that went into developing this report, and we're so encouraged by the large number of planned improvements and programs that the ATP is making possible. We did hope to recognize that the program is still really new, and so the vast majority of projects are not completed yet. And so we are looking forward to continuing to work with CTC staff and Caltrans and the local agencies in our area to grow and mature the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you tell our friends at Metro that we're going to be doing our homework on this, and we'd love for Patricia and her team to have more time and hear some comments, suggestions, more detail. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to the next item.
Commissioners, tab 56 is the department information item on the SB1 quarterly reports. This item will be presented by Caltrans. You should have received this as a yellow on Friday.
This is another yellow on Friday. Do we want to hold off and do this one at next month too?
Madam Chair, I would just respectfully, Jim, give us time to digest it. Having this now is not going to be as helpful. So maybe you want to go through some top line things of what we should look for when we read this, but obviously it's voluminous. We got it on Friday.
We're trying to tell you, Jim, we haven't had a chance to adequately do our homework, so if you can tee up the class here, and then we'll be back and have a full, robust discussion.
Wonderful. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Jim Davis, and I'm the SB1 Program Manager for Caltrans. This is the first quarterly progress report for the SB1 program. If you recall, I was before you in October as well with the progress report. That was a different progress report. One of the things we did with Commission staff is work to retool, per the Commission guidelines, retool this report to meet the Commission guidelines. After we came to agreement, I had about 4 weeks to pull that thing off. So definitely there is room for improvement, and I look forward to working with the Commission and the Commission staff to improve this report. With that being said, I do want to make some highlights here. This report is as of September 30th. It's the first quarter covering July, August, and September. Some of my numbers don't flange up with Clark Paulson because Clark Paulson talked about everything included in your October commission meeting. This report does have some October commission. We tried to update it as best we can on the fly to do that. So those are some of the things that caused that delay. Looking at the program itself, there are 5 competitive programs, or 5 programs. 2 of those programs were in existence before SB1, and that's the SHOP and the ATP program. You'll notice how large the SHOP program is as compared to the other programs. This is only a subset of the SHOP. This is not the entire SHOP. As we discussed yesterday at the project delivery meeting, the SHOP is close to 2,500 projects. So this is just a subset of that, as well as the ATP. And Ray just showed you there were 720 projects in the ATP. That is something that we need to take a look at from an efficiency standpoint and the different reports we're providing you and how we do a better job integrating those. I think, and you're right, Commissioner, looking at how big and voluminous this report is, at the end of the day, we're talking over 2,000 projects. And so we've got to figure out a better way to synthesize through this information and provide you a high-level report. Coming in January, Mike Keever is going to bring you the project delivery report, which is, once again, an overlap of this report. And so I think there's some things that we can do in working with you and commission staff to really improve, I think, our reporting to you. So with that, just real quickly, just a status, and I'll just go through the SHOP real quick and then go to the rest of the programs. For this portion of the SHOP, we had 1,191 projects that you programmed for $20.4 billion, and that represents pretty much the 2018 SHOP is what that includes. You've allocated 1,159 projects for $4.5 billion, and we've awarded 37 projects for $359 million. Just to remind you, what we did is you actually amended in projects into the 2016 SHOP to get us a head start once the SB1 was approved, and that's why we are able to have projects out in construction now, is because we jumped on that and got that done with your help. And then, of course, we have trade, congested corridors, local programs, and then the ATP program to show where they were as of June 30th. Just real quick, one of the things that we did is added the baselines that you approved in October. So you approved 12 baselines in the August meeting, 96 baselines in the October meeting, and there are 16 baselines that are on the docket to be approved today. And then we have close to, well, a little bit over 180 more to go currently. Of course, that will continue to grow as the program goes. As we talked yesterday, we talked about the project development process. I just put that there for reference because our report that I want to highlight talks about these, and you can see these in time fashion. We also talked about risk, and as we go through the project life cycle, we learn more. The risk and uncertainty are reduced as we go through time and learn more. Of course, the level of uncertainty up front is much greater than it is later. The big thing that we did is develop a status report, and we got 2,000 status reports from within the department and somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 or 600 local agencies. And so retooling our report, gathering that all information and synthesizing and putting the report was a monumental task. There is definitely room for improvement on that. This sample, in each one of the programs, we have an attachment 1 and an attachment 2. And attachment 1 has a listing of all those projects, and it has the budget, what's been expended, and what our forecasted number is. We then also look at the schedule, what those milestones, what was our commitment, and what the current status is on those. And so we've done that. And what's important on this as we look at this is on the right side, you'll see that costs, that corrective action plan is checked. So as we go through this, and in the SHOP in particular, we had almost 1,200 projects in there, and out of that we had 330 checks. One of the things we discussed yesterday in the project development workshop was our change control process and how the districts go through and manage most of those changes. Well, most of those 330 changes are managed by the districts, and they aren't even coming up to headquarters. In fact, when you put the whole SHOP together, and Mike Keever will present this in January of 2,500 projects, there are about 115 that are on the watch list. Those are the ones that have been vetted and will come to you and say, hey, these are the ones we're most concerned concerned with. At the end of the day, only about 98% of them, from a budgetary standpoint, 98% of them don't come to you because we stay within budget. 2%
Don't
of them
send
come
us
to you.
98%.
No, I'll deal with the 98%.
Oh, my.
Okay. The next slide is the attachment 2. So every time we toggle, or one of those scope schedule costs are toggled black, we have a corrective action plan. And this one, our corrective action plan is to eliminate the variances. And projects will be brought forward to the CTC after they've been vetted by the department. And for this example, the project budget will be managed to keep the project within budget. So the districts has figured out, yeah, they had a problem, but they're going to manage within their budget allocation. Then the next few slides is just a deep dive into the program. And I've got to remind everybody that this program, most of these programs were stood up in March and May of last year. And so they're brand new programs. So not a whole lot going on. But on some of these in the later stages or later phases of project delivery, because they're just getting started. But if you look at the shop, we currently had contract awards. We planned 15 and we actually delivered 23. And plan to date was 29 and 37. So we're ahead of schedule on delivering projects to construction. And then completion reports and final reports, this is something we're tracking as per the guidelines, and they're not there. Once projects get completed, then they fall into those categories for tracking. And then I talked about the 300 potential variances that we had and how we're managing those. Just to reiterate, many of those are going to be eliminated by managing for the district. And as reported on our quarterly progress report that Mike did last month, 98% of our projects are delivered within budget, and 84% of our projects are delivered within the original time commitment. And you may ask, why is it only 84%? So 2 years ago, I did an analysis of how long it takes to deliver projects. And what we found is about 15% of the time, it takes longer than 4 years or a shop cycle to deliver a project. An example of that, and we talked about this yesterday, and we talked about Pfeiffer Canyon, and how Tim talked about delivering it in 7 months, and you asked him, well, if you had to follow all the rules and regulations, how long would it take? And he said 7 years. And that's an example of, bridges on the coast over water take a lot more than 4 years. And so what we were doing was force-fitting projects into 4 years when we knew we really couldn't deliver them in 4 years. So that's transparency and accountability, showing that that's there. But the reality is we've implemented long lead projects to basically show, hey, this is how long it's really going to take, and get that in there. So, and we know it takes longer than 4 years for those types of projects.
We did see the CNN on the Alaska DOT 4 days and they're back. Did you see that one?
I did not.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
For the trade corridors, we've had one project corrective action that's listed. This was a project that came to you in October. A bid opened and they needed more money, and it came to you, and it was the Reading project, Anderson 6 lane. It was a trade corridor and STIP funded project, and you approved that. So that risk is now mitigated. For Solutions, a congested corridor, we had one project on there, and we've got a scheduled delay. And this is one of our CMGC. They know the costs are going up, and so they've asked for a 6-month time extension so they can do some modifications to the contract and bring the costs in. And so they're still planning on going out to the construction at the same time. So that delay will not affect them going out to construction. Local programs, we've had one project that was awarded for a value of $7 million and no corrective actions. And my last slide is for the ATP project. 7 projects out of the 148 that I'm tracking at this moment were awarded for $5 million. And this concludes my report.
We have any questions, comments? Commissioner? Okay, I'll go.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate. I haven't been able to dig into it yet, but I know there's a lot of, this was something that I haven't been able to see before, which is a full exhaustive list of the shop in one place. That's now, it's not retrievable online in like searchable, but right now at least I have it. So thank you for that. I know that was a big task.
No, thank you, and that's a great point. Our plan is to get this online. I think it's one of my commitments to Commissioner, or Executive Director Branson, was to do this, to get it all online, so that people can search and find and look at their projects.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, I just
Commissioner-
wanted to echo his comments. This is a good report. You've laid it out well, so I wouldn't tweak with it too much. I think probably the thing you might do in the future is put together, and if there are things that you think are particularly important or should be highlighted, just put together a couple page executive summary to bring out those things and tack it on the front. But I think we, in order to be fully accountable, we need to be able to have access to all of this information. And you've got to do it anyway, so you might as well give it to us, you know?
Yes, sir.
Great, Jim. We do appreciate, and I think your perspective, I did note today you didn't have acting in this report today as the acting position you were in, but we do appreciate the fact that you have served in so many different perspectives, and I think you add value when you do these kind of analyses, because it enriches, I think, all of us to hear from someone who's worn a lot of those different shoes and try to figure out the cause and effect of some things. So we all remain very appreciative of the workshop we had yesterday and look forward to doing more of that. And I think it'll probably tie into some of this work as well. So with that, we'll do our homework. So stick around in January and we'll be back and you will too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was info only, so we don't need to tell ourselves anything else we're going to do. So we can move on now to the next item. Terry.
Commissioners, item number 57 is an action item to approve baseline agreements for 16 SHOP projects. Approval of these agreements will establish them as the basis for project delivery and monitoring. With your approval of these agreements, a total of 92 baseline agreements will have been approved for SHOP projects since the adoption of the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. Commission staff would like to recognize Caltrans headquarters programming for their work providing us with the necessary documentation for these agreements. Staff has reviewed these agreements and finds them to be consistent with commission-adopted guidelines and recommends approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We'll move on to item 58.
Yes, Commissioners. Yes, I'm on this side today.
Oh, you're over here.
Yes.
I'm looking over there. Where are you?
So tab 58 is an information item summarizing the current savings policies for the Proposition 1B programs. With most of the projects completed or under construction, staff is evaluating options to close out these 10-year-old programs and will come forward with a recommendation at a future meeting. The item provides potential options staff is evaluating, but would be happy to take any other considerations commissioners may have. No action is necessary at this time, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Van Konynenberg.
Thank you for preparing this. I would like to add for consideration that if there's a phase 2 of a project that did not go funded in the first go-round, that be eligible for reapplication if there are leftover funds. So I know of a couple instances where a project was taken down to it was broken into 2 phases after being originally a 1-phase project, and it would be nice if there was an opportunity for them to come back and apply for the second phase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioner Harp?
Just a brief nostalgic comment. This is a program that many of us spent most of our career on this commission administering, and my very
How about
first.
getting it in first place?
Yeah, and some of us in our day jobs helped to make happen. So it was a great program. What we have now with SB1 and that funding program is going to be a tremendous asset to the state. But it's this program, which is going to be wrapping up. did a lot of good work for a lot of people in this state. It happened to kick in right during the worst recession in many, many decades, and kept a lot of our construction industry alive at a time when they would not have been able to survive, and in the process helped make some important infrastructure improvements. So it was a good program, and we had the opportunity as a commission to see some of those savings go through and become kind of recycled, because we got a lot more projects out of that money than we originally thought we would, because of the bidding environment and because of the recession at the time. So it was a great program. A lot of good things happened, and it's good to see this final work wrap up.
I would agree, and I think, President Pro Tem Parada at the time, who was instrumental in helping us or making this happen, reminded us over and over and over that this was a beginning, and it was the intention that this was a building block, and I think our combined collective family have built a really big building block to start. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, just one other thought, too. I remember doing some polling in my day job before this happened, and at the time they were considering a $4 or $5 billion bond measure, and our polling showed at the time you could do 20, 30, $40 billion program and still get the same voter support. I'm not sure that would happen today, but at that time it was the right thing to do at the right time, and so we actually ended up with a much more robust program than we were looking at originally.
And probably the first in the nation to have a dedicated freight program, too, with our TCIF in there. So it's great. So I just want to, for the record, read that Paul Hubler was here yesterday to speak on this, but could not be here. So we have received the comments and his statement. So thank you. We'll all be aware of that. So that was an information item.
Yes.
So thank you, Dawn. And we will move on now to item 59. Robert.
Commissioners, tab 59 is a department information item on Proposition 1B quarterly reports. This item will be presented by Caltrans. In this update, Caltrans will provide a presentation on the State Route 99 corridor program and the Intercity Rail Improvement Program.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bruce DeTerra with Caltrans Programming. A shout out to Terry for thanking programming. People don't usually think of us. We're just one of those cogs in the process of bureaucracy part. So it's nice to actually get some recognition for our folks that work very hard day in and day out to get all this to you. So today I want to talk about the State Route 99 bond program. And I've got a few things to tell you about that program. I know many of you are familiar with it, but many of you were not involved in this when this happened. So this has been around. It was voted in 2006. It was mentioned earlier. This is the only one of the bond programs, or essentially any program in California, that is route specific, that you have a $1 billion dedicated to Highway 99. There's nothing else like that. So we have this set aside specifically to improve Highway 99. So it reflects the importance of the route. There are millions of residents, businesses, and industries along several hundred miles of Route 99. That route has both exports and imports for the agricultural industry, and a lot of people don't recognize that the ag industry imports tremendous volumes of materials, fertilizers, all sorts of things that enable the production of all the fruits and vegetables that go there. There's also an enormous amount of processing and manufacturing of those products that are produced to add value to them for export internationally. That's also often not recognized, and a lot of those activities are not just passing through Highway 99 to go to Los Angeles to the ports or to go to other states. It's going between jurisdictions, between communities to do different steps in the processing, from the raising of the food itself, whether it be animal products or plant products, to have it manufactured, perhaps canned and bottled or something else somewhere else, and then exported. So there are a lot of trips for one product coming along that corridor. It's also the largest urbanized region in the state that is not connected to the other regions by a 6 or 8 lane highway facility. So when we started off on this Proposition 1B program for 99, it was connected by a 4 lane highway on the south in between the communities, in some places with stop signs, or signals rather. So you had signalized intersections on this tremendously important corridor going hundreds of miles from Red Bluff all the way down to Bakersfield and the connection at Tejon, and so that you didn't have this connectivity on there. So in the San Joaquin Valley, the focus was going from 4-lane configurations, that's 2 lanes in each direction, to a minimum standard of 6 lanes each direction, and to build it to modern standards. In the city of Bakersfield, there were sections that were going from 6-lane to 8 lanes, so 8-lane freeway for each direction. This area also, of course, is very important for recreation for the major urbanized areas. We all think of the iconic Yosemite Valley and all these other places in the Sierra Nevada. Well, you can't get there without going on Highway 99. So you have the tremendous demands on this highway that is the main street for all these communities: Fresno, Bakersfield, Merced, Madera, Modesto, Sacramento, Chico, and Marysville, they're in there, in Yuba City, and then Red Bluff at the north. So you have all this activity, and largely unrecognized and invisible to a lot of the state. This entire corridor is also among the poorest air quality in the country. It has extreme poverty rates and low employment rates, and it has lots of challenges with access and mobility between the communities and then connecting to other communities. So it's extremely important for this. Oh, how do I get this? All right. So I'm going to start off with the San Joaquin Valley. I was looking for the screen in front of me. I'm sorry, I had this up here and didn't even recognize it in front of me. So for the San Joaquin Valley, we've done 16 projects at $785 million of bond funding. So there's a split between for the $1 billion that went to the San Joaquin Valley, and this represents the $785 million, substantially higher traffic volumes, higher population, higher economic activity. And then that bond money attracted an additional $529 million in other kinds of funds to add to that. And a lot of those other funds came from regional agencies, self-help and otherwise, and their locally generated revenue. STIP funds, both at the regional level and in the interregional program, both contributed to these projects. The TCIF program contributed to some of these projects as well. So you had bond project teaming up with other bond funding teaming up with others to develop a more robust project than just this program could deliver all by itself. We also had federal demonstration funds come into these projects, and at the quite surprisingly, we already had TCEP projects, the SB1 funding teaming up on one of the projects that enabled us to then free up money to move to another project. So for the bond programs, as Commissioner Arp mentioned, we've been making this money work very hard, because when you look at the totals on this of $1.3 billion and $209 million, you add that together, that's more than $1 billion that we recycled. We had a lot of savings. We put money back in every time there's a savings, and we keep it within those corridor regions. For the San Joaquin Valley, we still have a projected $26 million remaining. And I say projected because we don't actually have the ability to do anything further with those funds until the projects close out. That's so that any claims or anything else that's in there are taken care of, and then we move the money to another project. And we do that in consultation with our partner agencies. And then in the Sacramento Valley, a substantially lower amount of money and a very different sort of challenge. A lot of the Sacramento Valley was 2-lane. North of Sacramento, you had a 2-lane highway connecting areas. So we had to get regions to agree on what the vision was going to be for dealing with Highway 99, which was on the west side of going between Red Bluff and Sacramento, and Highway 70 corridor. And the region selected Highway 70 to invest the majority of the money available to them to widen to a full 4-lane freeway component. And we're working on that quite diligently. But Highway 99 between Yuba City and Sacramento was an agreement to invest in the 4-laning, and in some places 6-laning. And to also, in a lot of it, convert it to an expressway or freeway rather than conventional highway to improve safety and reduce conflict points. So in the San Joaquin Valley, the program has led to 75 new lane miles being constructed. So that's not center line, that's a lane mile going, each direction, a single lane, 75, and then 4 new or reconstructed interchanges. So when this is done, and I'll demonstrate this in some photos later, it's brought up to current modern standards. And you have to remember Highway 99 has evolved over more than a century connecting all these communities. And so it has a variety of standards that it was built to. And some of it in the earlier days was by whatever standard you managed to get the thing built. But now it's being built to modern standards and where possible to interstate so that that happens. And the results of all this, of course, is reduced congestion because we no longer have 4-lane, more reliable travel times and such. So this is in the District 6 region. I have 2 maps for the San Joaquin Valley. So something that's really important to recognize, there are 2 important things, is that you have, as you can see on here, you have multiple regional agencies. Each one of these agencies is its own MPO. So as we're doing these projects, we're partnering, Caltrans is partnering with our multiple MPOs. And the MPOs are all having to cooperate and coordinate with each other to share this funding to get a lot done for the whole corridor. And those partnerships have been working tremendously well. It's remarkable, the partnerships. And by extension, of course, they have to work with their cities and county governments as well, and the communities. So you'll notice on the map, and hopefully you can see them well enough on your screens, while there's a very impressive amount of work done on this, there's still some very large remaining gaps. And $26 million, even if there are no claims, is not going to close those gaps. So we still have issues before we reach the vision of what the long-range plan was for a minimum level of six lanes in each direction. Fortunately, in some areas, such as in Tulare County, we have a substantial amount of right-of-way available, so we're not having to go out and purchase a lot of right-of-way, though perhaps in some cases we would. And we don't have a lot of structures, a lot of cross roads or rivers that we're having to deal with as well, although there are some. Farther to the north part of the county, you can see that we have a lot more of that 6-lane and completing. There aren't big gaps. We have a relatively small number of smaller gaps, but those are very expensive gaps, particularly in the city of Merced. That's an elevated freeway section in a very constrained environment. So that's going to be a challenge to pull together the money. But again, there are, with SB1, predictability. So the challenge for this entire corridor, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley, is they're not really eligible for congested corridors. Even though they have tremendously congested corridors, I don't foresee that it'll be anytime in the near future will there be building HOV lanes or having otherwise managed lanes, either for passenger travel or freight travel. Perhaps that will happen at some point, but not in the immediate planning horizon. But they are eligible for the TCEP funding, so that's good. They're also eligible for ITIP funding, and of course they have the RIP funding. So we'll look for those partnerships. This is an example, this photo is an example in Bakersfield. And what we had was a 4-lane facility, or I believe this is 6-lane going to, this is 6 lanes going to 8 lanes. So one of the things that happens here is we have an existing facility. And we often use the example of when you're remodeling your house and getting estimates and stuff. Well, on this, we are totally reconstructing your house while you live in it. And so on this freeway, you can see what we have to do. We had a 6-lane facility. Well, that traffic doesn't have anywhere else to go through Bakersfield. While we're reconstructing the freeway and building the new capacity, the one additional lane, we've got to keep the other lanes running so that you maintain that 6 lanes. Sure, we can shut it down at night, take a lane or something to do work, but you can't just shut down 99. There is no alternate route for Highway 99 in the San Joaquin Valley. There is if you're driving from Sacramento to Los Angeles, you can choose, do you want to take Highway 99 or do you want to take I-5? If you're in Fresno, you don't have an alternate route to go to Merced. You're on Highway 99 and that's it, or you're taking a 2-lane highway way off somewhere and coming way back. So this photo also demonstrates the ability and the importance of bringing other funding. Jim mentioned the tremendous amount of SHOP funding we have. The section where the red truck is, that you can see very clearly, and I am not a pavement expert, but that pavement is getting close to the end of its useful life on that. So when this new lane is completed, and you can see we're getting darn close to it, we will shift those 3 lanes of traffic over and come back in with a follow-up SHOP project to reconstruct those lanes. So when we're done with this, we will have a fully reconstructed to modern standards 4-lane freeway. And we also, obviously, we know there are a lot of trucks, and we can expect future high truck volumes. And this is probably a Sunday morning, given the truck volume here. If you drove through Bakersfield, don't ever expect to see 1 or 2 trucks over that distance. Expect to see 50 or 60 in there. So they will build that structural section for the truck lanes to be much stronger. You can also see that we do not have standard shoulders on the outside of that lane coming towards you. Okay, this is the San Joaquin River. This is another challenge as we had. This demonstrates several of them. Crossing rivers, of course, you're in a sensitive environment, so you can imagine all of the environmental issues that we're having to deal with. And this is one of those rivers that is being restored to enable the free flow of salmon and such. So this is a challenge there. We also have a long-established railroad right next to us, and this is true of a lot of the corridor. And in many places, it's much closer to the highway and in an urban environment rather than crossing a river. This is pretty good, that we just have to cross. We're not having to squeeze an interchange in between that railroad track and developed areas. So this has been a challenge for us. But as you can see here, we've built a new structure, and this is the new highway, and we're demolishing the old structure. But you can see by the 2 lanes going in each direction, we're not done. We're going to have to come back in and then build the other side of this, and then we will come back to the full 6-lane configuration for this highway and pull the construction bridge out of the riverbed and restore everything, and no doubt do a lot of other improvements. This is another example when we're away from the cities and such, where we're coming in and building a new interchange to modern standards, with the looking forward to the future, what future demands are going to be. So in the Sacramento Valley, very different situation than what we've done. 8 new lane miles as compared to that 75, but we have a lot more reconstructed or new interchanges, where we went from a signalized intersection or a completely uncontrolled intersection to a interchange. So we're improving safety, we're getting rid of delay and congestion and conflict points. And we also made some operational improvements. Same kinds of benefits, but dramatically reduced congestion when you take out a signalized intersection, as was the case just north of Sacramento. So here you can see a lot of improvements in the south end, and not as much on the north end. And part of that goes back to what I was saying about the region making an investment choice to focus on the Highway 70 corridor for the 4-laning. And we used a lot of regional money to do the widening of Highway 99 up through Sutter County. So this is an example of one of the new interchanges north of Sacramento. And I particularly liked this picture because not only this used to be a 4-lane signalized intersection, but that it represents that our work is not done here. This is an active construction zone, and the Highway 99 corridor is going to remain an active construction zone for quite a lot longer until we get this full reconstruction of the facility completed and expansion. But this is this is the poster child, along with the program I really, really like, TCIF, a poster child of the success of Proposition 1B of what's been accomplished and the partnerships that have been built on this. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have. And then after this, we have an intercity passenger rail presentation.
Okay, I have a question from Commissioner Gometti.
Madam Chair, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me an idea of what percentage of the projects are totally complete now?
Oh, a percentage. It'd be hard to guess, well, by complete, operational.
Yeah, completed projects.
I'm going to guess we're somewhere around 80% of it being complete and functional. There are still some that are under active construction and some that are still under development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're very, but as you can see by the funding, that funding is committed and being used. Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much.
Do we have any other comments? Bruce, I just want to add a couple quick things. That area is also a non-attainment air district, so I think it's very important for all of us to understand the emission reductions that you've achieved by this work and the future emission reduction potential with that. And it's also, I think, what Andy Chesley referred to as a land of super commutes now. So I think there's a lot of benefit, and closing some of those gaps may help us a lot. So
yes, very much so.
Look forward to working with you on that.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Robert, are we? Oh, we have Kyle. Oh, okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kyle Gradinger. I'm the Assistant Division Chief for Rail and Mass Transit at Caltrans. And I'm going to give you an update on the status of Prop 1B, the Intercity Rail Improvement Program. And before I get started, I just wanted to take a step back and note that the projects that were programmed with Prop 1B IRI were programmed over a decade ago, and that is before substantial federal involvement in rail, before substantial changes in the way that we think and plan for rail. And yet, in spite of these things being programmed a decade ago, the projects that are now coming to fruition, they mesh very nicely with this new vision for an integrated statewide rail and transit network that we've laid out in the State Rail Plan, which I presented to you a few months ago. And so I think that the foresight of the planners and the commission for the projects that were allocated over the last decade is really starting to tee up, I think, near-term growth and transformation, and we're really going to start to see the benefits from these foundational projects over the next several years. So with that, I'll jump into the presentation. So quick background. So the Prop 1B provided $400 million for the Intercity Rail Improvement Program, and $125 million of that was reserved for the procurement of rail cars and locomotives. So to date, the Commission programmed $392 million worth of projects to 28 different projects. $342.5 million has been allocated. 17 projects totaling $162 million are completed at this point. We have the potential for $6 million in savings from those completed projects to be reprogrammed. There are 7 projects totaling $180.5 million that are still in construction, and then 4 projects are programmed but remain unallocated at this point in time. So we'll be bringing in action shortly, an amendment to delete some funding from one of the projects, a capitalized maintenance program, and to reprogram identified savings, that $6 million that I talked about. We'll reprogram a portion of that to other projects. And so the reprogramming will be put on to 2 significant projects, a Southern California signal and track modernization project at LA Union Station to improve fluidity of trains in and out of LA Union Station and to prepare that facility for an innovative project that's going to allow in the future run-through services at that terminal station. And then also reprogramming that funding onto a passing siding between Laguna Niguel and San Juan Capistrano to create better operations for Metrolink and the Lausanne Surfliner. And then really briefly, a couple of just quick project highlights. One of the projects that was funded through Prop 1B and as well as Prop 1A, the high-speed passenger train bond, and other sources was an effort to triple track the corridor essentially between LA or Commerce and Fullerton through LA County and into Orange County. This project has been a several years long project with cooperation from Metrolink, Surfliner, the BNSF Railway, and others. And I'm happy to report that the fully expended 1B funds on this project have created a situation now where in that entire stretch, I believe it's about a 25 or 30 mile stretch of railroad, there's just one tiny gap left where we are not triple tracked. And that was being held up by a grade crossing that needed to be approved by the CPUC. Caltrans staff, BNSF, Santa Fe Springs, and others worked with the CPUC to resolve that issue over the last year. And we are hoping, and we are not hoping, we've been informed by BNSF Railway that now that that is out of the way, they are going to get in there and complete the final short section, about a half a mile of triple tracking through the intersection. And once that is done, BNSF will allow the number of passenger trains or the slots per day in that corridor to increase from 50 to 84 passenger trains per day. That is, as I mentioned, one of those foundational projects for a new level of growth. That's going to allow the Surfliner trains to go from 12 round trips a day in that corridor. It's going to give them the ability to get closer to an idealized hourly service, 18 trains a day. It's going to allow Metrolink to operate another 10 or so round trips a day in that corridor. And these are the projects that were programmed, as I mentioned, a decade ago. We're working collaboratively with the same partners now and with new funding sources to take that from 84 passenger slots a day to a very ambitious program that's going to allow half-hourly Metrolink service, intercity hourly service, and more in the future, so that we're talking not trains per day, but number of trains per hour. And so this will be unleashed in probably spring of 2019, and we're working with our partners to make sure that we've got the operational resources and the rail equipment and fleet to provide that additional service through here.
Madam Chair, could I?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Very good information. On that last section that you mentioned, from Fullerton to downtown LA, I sometimes use the train from San Diego to LA, and up to Fullerton, it's pretty time efficient. It's usually much better than the car. But from Fullerton Irvine area into LA, it's another hour. So will the triple tracking help with that?
It should help with that. It should really reduce the congestion. Right now, BNSF Railway, which owns and dispatches that portion of the corridor, when trains don't arrive on time and when they get bunched up, they have to sort of dispatch and sort of pick winners and losers. And so what this triple track will allow is basically significantly increased flexibility so that dispatchers can send more trains through that corridor. It's a pinch point right now that's going to be resolved.
Congestion is the main problem. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not using this right. Because it seems to me, we don't have to wait, they don't stop. But it just sort of chugs along, and it seems like the tracks are old. I mean, my personal opinion, I have no idea.
It's actually a very high performance corridor through
Okay,
there. Yeah,
all
but this will get rid of that uncertainty involved with
Is there any
congestion.
way, will it actually shave minutes off the trip? Do you know yet?
Ultimately, there will be some travel time reductions in that corridor between essentially Anaheim and Los Angeles, in the matter of if it's 30 minutes today, we're talking maybe 5 minutes or so. But the capacity is the real issue in that corridor.
Okay, thank you very much.
We also have a huge homelessness issue in that area. It's a huge problem for our class ones in that area. I think it's a continuous, we have fires constantly in that area. Question I have for you, Kyle, is where specifically is that last grade crossing and who's the lead agency?
So this is Raymer Burnson. Rosecrans Marquardt. There's so many R words in the program. Rosecrans Marquardt, which is also, we do have a project in the works for a full grade separation. This was a grade crossing improvement so that the CPUC would allow us to triple track an at-grade crossing.
So you're going to do that first and then come back and do a grade sep later?
Exactly. It's sort of a 5-year interim phase before the actual grade separation comes into being. And this allows us to go from 50 to 84 slots. The full grade separation enables the quadruple tracking of the corridor, which is a project that we're working on with our partners.
Well, the challenge may be when you're under construction, you may not get the advantage of that because it takes a while. Who's the lead agency on that?
LA Metro.
Okay, because Alameda Corridor East kind of has the gold standard for grade seps, so want to make sure that either they talk to each other on a regular basis, but that agency has shown over and over again that that's what they do, and they do it very, very well. So clearly this is an important corridor. We try to get more and more folks onto the rail. We try to get more and more freight onto the rail. So I think smoothing that out and then will be helpful.
Great.
Okay.
We'll make sure they're talking. All right, and the final slide is another project highlight. As I mentioned, a portion of the Prop 1B IRI funds were for locomotive and railcar procurements. So I wanted to talk about the Siemens Charger locomotive. This is the new intercity locomotive that we are acquiring in California. Prop 1B allowed us to match some federal dollars that took our total fleet to 22 of these new locomotives, 14 paid for with Prop 1B. Out of those 22, 17 of those locomotives have received their final acceptance. 3 more we are about to sign a conditional acceptance on, and the last 2 are in the factory at Siemens in Sacramento, awaiting their final parts, and are on schedule. And I'm happy to report that these locomotives are now operating with PTC on all 3 of our corridors, intercity corridors in California. And from what I've been hearing, they are meeting or exceeding all of the performance specifications, including quick acceleration and quiet operation. And so those are a few of the highlights from the Prop 1B IRI program.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments from my fellow commissioners? We're good? Thank you very much, Kyle. Okay, with that, we'll move on to, that was information, we'll move to item number 60.
Commissioners, item 60 is an action item.
There's Teresa over there.
I'm over here, yes. There is a yellow replacement item in your packet for this book item. This is a program amendment for the Proposition 1B Intercity Rail that Kyle just spoke about. The department is requesting to delete the capitalized maintenance project from the program and utilize these savings as well as other savings to program 2 new projects into the program. This is the Southern California Signal and Track Modernization Project, as well as the Passing Siding Laguna Niguel project in San Juan Capistrano. Staff recommends the approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 61.
Yes.
Teresa.
Kyle is here again to provide us an update on the Proposition 1A, high-speed passenger train bond program. Kyle.
Hello again. I could have kept this. All right, I'm going to give you a brief presentation as well, an update on Prop 1A, the high-speed passenger train bond program. So on November 4th, 2008, voters approved Prop 1A, the Safe, Reliable, High-Speed Passenger Train Bond Act for the 21st century, and approved the issuance of nearly $10 billion of bonds. Of that, $950 million of the Prop 1A funds were dedicated and directed to capital projects on existing passenger rail lines that would provide connectivity to the high-speed train system and for capacity enhancements and safety improvements on those lines. To date, the Commission has appropriated $931 million to 18 projects, of which $917 million has been programmed, $847 million has been allocated, and $690 million has been expended. A couple of those projects for commuter and urban rail agencies, $760 million was allocated across the state to every commuter rail or large urban rail operating agency, and $190 million to intercity passenger rail on the 3 corridors, the Surf Line and the San Joaquin and the Capitol Corridor. In terms of specific project progress, of the 18 projects that have been approved and allocated by the Commission, 4 of them have been fully completed, including a number of PTC, Positive Train Control improvement projects, and the Sandy Blue Line Light Rail. And there I mentioned the BNSF Triple Track and Commerce Fullerton, that the 1A funds have been expended on that project. And we have fully expended Prop 1A funds on 2 projects, but these are very large, complex projects that are still in progress with other funding, and those include system-wide PTC for the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, or MetroLink, and for the SFMTA Muni Central Subway project connecting 4th and King to Chinatown and the BART system. 7 projects in the 1A program pertain to the implementation of Positive Train Control, as I mentioned. 6 projects are on schedule to meet the federally mandated implementation deadline of December 31st of this year. And a 7th project, the Caltrain Advanced Signal System Positive Train Control, that is a project where we are working, Caltrain is working with the Federal Railroad Administration very closely on an alternative approval for a 2020 implementation. So quick highlights on the Central Subway project and MetroLink PTC. The Central Subway is a $1.6 billion project with $61 million in Prop 1A funds that were fully expended. And as I mentioned, that's going to provide a direct rapid transit link between downtown and the existing T third line Muni route on 3rd Street, bypassing heavy traffic congestion on 4th and Stockton. And as I mentioned, we'll provide a very important link between the Caltrain station at 4th and King, Chinatown, and the BART and Muni facilities under Market Street. That is scheduled to enter revenue service in 2020. The MetroLink Positive Train Control project has a total cost of $202 million, with $35 million from Prop 1A that has been fully expended. The MetroLink is very proudly the first passenger rail operation in the nation to operate life-saving positive train control technology across the entire network. And I would just add that based on what I've been following in the positive train control conversation, MetroLink has been a model for agencies across the United States in delivering PTC ahead of schedule and been able to really improve the operation of it and work through the bugs very quickly. Next steps for Prop 1A for the intercity rail component. Caltrans, we are actively working with rail agencies to put the remaining Prop 1A funds to work in a manner that promotes that connectivity and improves safety across the state. And I would just, as I mentioned before, the Prop 1B conversation, the projects that were funded through the Prop 1A were also, we didn't know it at the time, but they were very much foundational projects that are really going to help give us that first tranche of projects coming out of the state rail plan. They match up very nicely with that integrated vision, and we're very fortunate that those projects are here now and ready to tee us up for the next steps in state rail network.
Great. Yes, Commissioner Gometti.
Kyle, where does the electrification of Caltrain on the peninsula in the Bay Area, where does it, what program does that fit into?
I'll have to get back to you with an answer on the various funding sources. There's federal funds certainly involved as well, and cap and trade dollars. So it's a variety of sources on the Caltrain project.
But it's not in this program?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you.
If memory serves, the first segment of electrification of Caltrain is 75% of the line, not the entire line, but a good start. It's a $1.98 billion effort. $674 million was the funds that many of us secured from the federal government about 2 years ago. That was the final layer of funds for that first segment of the 75%. This commission, through our $0.95 million of the $9.95 billion, allocated several years ago about $104 million towards that electrification effort. The rest of the funds are regional, some other state funds, and local from all three counties through their Joint Powers Authority and through local ballot measures that all three counties have passed over the years. I could get the specific breakdown for the commission at another point if that would be helpful.
Kyle, I have a quick question for you in terms of positive train control, and unfortunately Commissioner Burke isn't here today because she's our Amtrak board member. But on the corridor where Metrolink is running positive train control, that means our two Class 1s are running positive train control as well? Is that true?
Yes, I'm not an expert, but I'm comfortable in saying
And
yes.
so is Amtrak on positive train control? I would think you'd have to control all the parts to the puzzle, or you couldn't.
Yes, and you're accurate. Southern California is one of the most complicated PTC puzzles in the country because we have not only the two host freight railroads, but we also have two host passenger railroads and then 5 different operators. My understanding is that there is run-through revenue demonstration operation on all Metrolink and Surfliner corridors in Southern California. We've worked very closely with Amtrak.
Just confirm that all of those partners are on the positive.
I'll have to confirm with you, but I believe the answer is yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to move now to item 62. Dawn.
Yes, Commissioners, tab 62 is an action item to amend the Proposition 1B TCIF program of projects. Orange County Transportation Authority requests to remove the San Juan Creek Bridge Replacement Project from the program, as the project will not be able to meet the June 2019 allocation deadline, and add the Interstate 5 Improvement Segment 1 project. Additionally, San Bernardino County Transportation Authority requests to add the State Route 60 Archibald Avenue Interchange Project, and staff has reviewed these requests and find them consistent with program guidelines. Therefore, we recommend approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Susan, do you need me? No? Okay. Item 63.
Yes, item 63 is an action item to approve the Proposition 1B TCIF baseline agreement for the Interstate 5 Improvement Segment 1 project in Orange County, which we just added in the previous agenda item. Staff has reviewed the baseline agreement and finds it consistent with the program guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni and a second, I heard first, I think, from Commissioner Dunn. So is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to 64. Teresa?
Commissioners, item 64 is an information item. The following few items are STIP amendments for notice. The Napa Valley Transportation Authority, the City of American Canyon, in concurrence with MTC, proposes a STIP amendment to program an AB 3090 cash reimbursement in order to advance the construction of the Devlin Road and Vine Trail Extension Class 1 path project. This project is currently programmed in 2021 with RIP funds. The local agency is ready to proceed this fiscal year using their own local funds. Staff has no issues with this proposal and will be recommending approval at the next commission meeting. This is just for notice at this moment.
Thank you for the information. Okay, so that was 64 and 65, right?
Yes.
Then we move to items.
No, that was only 64.
That was only 64.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's do 65.
Yes, sorry. Okay, 65 is also a STIP amendment for notice. The Department of Transportation proposes a STIP amendment to reprogram $4,637,000 out of the $20 million they currently have programmed with interregional shares to the Coast Subdivision Rail Corridors Improvement Project in 21-22. The department proposes to program these funds to the Coast Subdivision Positive Train Control Project in fiscal year 1920. Staff needs to evaluate the programming of this project in fiscal year 1920 and may possibly propose a different programming year with the understanding that if capacity allows, the project may be able to be advanced. Staff will work with the department on the programming year and will be bringing forward a recommendation at the next commission meeting.
Any questions for Teresa? Okay, hearing none, we will move on then to item 66.
Also a STIP amendment for notice, information item. The department, the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, and the City-County Association of Governments, in concurrence with MTC, proposes a STIP amendment to segment the San Mateo US 101 Managed Lanes project. This project is currently programmed with RIP funds in the fiscal year 2021. They are proposing to split the project into two segments, the southern segment and the northern segment. The STIP funding will stay with the northern segment in fiscal year 2021. They are ready to proceed with the southern segment using Solutions for Congested Corridors funding. This request is consistent with the program amendment for the Solutions for Congested Corridors program earlier in the agenda. Staff has no issues with this proposal and will be recommending it at the next commission meeting.
Questions for Teresa? Hearing none, we're ready to move on to item 67. Richard.
Commissioners, item 67 is an action item where the department is requesting the amendment of 29 new projects, as is reflected on the change list, updates to 10 program projects, and to initiate the development of one long lead project in the 2018 shop. Of the new projects, 17 are major damage restorations and 6 are collision reduction safety projects. The other new projects consist of 2 bridge preservation and 4 roadway preservation projects that will address 2 of the primary asset classes defined under Senate Bill 1. All are consistent with the Transportation Asset Management Plan. Commission staff has reviewed these 2018 shop amendments and recommends commission approval.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Tavallone. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 68, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. We have 2 projects this morning that exceed the programmed amount by more than 20%. Item number 68 is a department action item requesting an initial construction allocation of $20,116,000, which exceeds the programmed amount by more than 20%. This initial construction allocation is based on the updated engineer's estimate. The shop project on State Route 128 in Napa County will replace a structurally deficient bridge and install horizontal drains to resolve issues with an active landslide. Commission staff has reviewed this allocation request and recommends commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavallone, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 69, Chris?
Yes. There is a revised Yellow Book item for this, I want to remind everybody. And so item 69 is a department action item requesting an initial construction allocation of $21,388,000, which exceeds the programmed amount by more than 20%. This initial construction allocation is based on the updated engineer's estimate, and this shop project on State Route 1 in Santa Cruz County will repair pavement and upgrade and replace concrete barriers. Additionally, the project will reconstruct 44 existing ramps and 2 new curb ramps to satisfy ADA requirements. In addition to that, there will be an additional 1.8 miles of non-standard concrete barrier replaced that was not in the originally programmed amount. Commission staff has reviewed this allocation request and recommend commission approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Arp. Is there discussion? Yes, Commissioner Gometti.
I just want to make sure that District 5 provides tape measures so that we can measure the heights of walls. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, any other discussion on this item? Hearing no more, I will ask for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Let's move on to item 70. Chris, you're up again.
Yes, Chair, with your permission and to be more efficient, items 70 through 76 are 7 projects that are all supplemental fund requests for allocations to award, and they're very similar. If we could present them all at once.
That would be great, I think.
Okay, so Commissioners, items number 70 through 76 are department action items requesting supplemental allocations to award construction contracts. All 7 projects are in rural areas and experienced bids that exceeded the engineer's estimate in an amount ranging from 19 to 66%. Apart from item number 75, Caltrans had increased their estimates to account for the current bid climate. However, the bids on these projects came in higher than anticipated. Caltrans and Commission staff have reviewed these projects and concluded that re-advertising would not result in lower bid prices. With that, Commission staff recommends Commission approval on items 70 through 76.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 77. Chris, you're still batting.
Okay, yes. So item 77 is a department action item for a multi-funded shop and STIP/RIP project located at the Interstate 80, 680, State Route 12 interchange. And interchange, I don't miss commuting through 3 days a week anymore. At the August 2013 commission meeting, the commission approved an initial construction allocation of $63,009,000 for this project. It was awarded with an allocation savings of $1,153,000 in March 2014. In March 2016, the Commission approved a $2,330,000 supplemental fund for construction support costs to redesign and address constructability issues and for increased construction duration to address these issues. This project is a Proposition 1B project with a baseline agreement and therefore did not have G12 authority. Construction began in June of 2014. The project was open to traffic in September of 2017, and plant establishment was completed in September of 2018. The project is now ready for construction contract acceptance. Caltrans is requesting $602,000 in SHOP and $798,000 in STIP/RIP funds for construction capital and an additional $100,000 in SHOP for additional construction support. Commission staff has reviewed this allocation request and recommends Commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second, I believe, was from Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Richard.
Commissioners, item 78 is an action item. This is a STIP widening project located on Interstate 15 in San Bernardino County. And please note there are minor corrections to the cost percentages and an addition of a PPNO number as are reflected on the change list. At the December 2014 Commission meeting, Caltrans requested and the Commission approved an initial construction allocation of $71 million for this project. During construction, the contractor encountered differing site conditions that resulted in project delays, item cost overruns, and extra work. A supplemental allocation of $6.4 million for construction capital and $2.75 million for support are requested to complete construction. Commission staff has reviewed this allocation request and recommends Commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavallone and a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. So with that, Richard has presented his last item. So on behalf of the CTC commissioners and our entire team, we thank you, and it's been a great pleasure having you do whatever needed to be done, and we've had the busiest months of our lives ever, and appreciate your hard work and your great attitude. So stay in touch.
And I do want to thank Susan and Mitch's staff. They've been just so welcoming me over the last few months. I've learned a heck of a lot from your team. And again, I hope I was able to do a positive contribution to your team.
Okay, Terry, you're up, 79.
Awesome. And I do want to thank Richard. He's been an incredible support for myself. So I appreciate it, Richard. We will miss him if we let him go. Commissioners, item number 79 is a department action item requesting an allocation of $85.9 million for 11 shop projects. Commission staff has reviewed the projects for conformity with their programming in the 2018 shop and consistency with the Transportation Asset Management Plan and recommends Commission approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Arp. I heard a second by Commissioner Kehoe over there. So any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Carried. Yes, of course, Carl.
Madam Chair, if I may, on an earlier item, I've received the budget breakdown from Caltrain Management. I'll send it to Susan to send to all of our commissioner colleagues.
Thank you. That was fast. We love the wonders of modern technology and our multitasking team here. So that is great. So Terry, next item is 80.
Perfect. Commissioners, item 80 is a department action item requesting an allocation of pre-construction support. There's a few changes noted on the change list. With those changes, this request is a request for $112.1 million for 90 shop pre-construction support phases. Under the attachment for 2.5B2A, please note that project number 11 was withdrawn prior to the meeting. With those changes, Commission staff has reviewed these projects for their conformity with their programming in the 2018 shop and recommends Commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavallone, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Teresa, item 81.
Commissioners, item 81 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request of $2,698,000 for 3 STIP projects off the state highway system. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines and the program. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavallone. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 82, Teresa.
Commissioners, item 82 is an action item. This is a supplemental request for contract award of $1,550,000 for a locally administered STIP project in Lassen County. Lassen County was approved a STIP allocation of $6.8 million in August 2018 for their Skyline Road Extension project. This project will complete the connector between State Route 139 and State Route 36 east in the city of Susanville. This project will complete part of the master transportation plan for traffic circulation between the two state highways. The county opened bids on November 1st, and the lowest bids was above the engineer's estimate for the requested amount. The local agency does not have local funds to cover the additional funds needed to award the contract. Lassen County does have unprogrammed share balances in the STIP, and they would like to utilize our shares to be able to award the contract. Although staff recognizes the position Lassen County is in and the challenges these small rural agencies have and the reality of their limited resources, this request is not consistent with guidelines, and staff recommends not approving this request. Here to speak on behalf of Lassen County is Mr. John Clarisi from the Lassen County Transportation Commission, as well as District 2 Director Dave Moore.
Can we have you come forward, please?
Good morning, Madam Chair, rest of the commission. Please excuse my voice. I am dealing with this cold that everybody's had. I believe I am not infectious anymore. Staff, Teresa, by the way, has done a great job helping us out with this. All of your staff has, as well as the District 2 folks have been very good about trying to get this through. She has accurately represented our position. Let me give you just a little bit more background. Once again, this is a vital interest to the community. It's been on the books, I believe, maybe before Papa Joe got on the commission. It's been around for a long time. Some of it's starting to, like a lot of these projects, I like to say, they don't age well. We only have one asphalt plant. We only have really 1.5 contractors in Lassen County that do this kind of work. And since the state of California started paving everything it could get its hands on prior to the election in November, it's been hard to get people's attention on these projects. Certainly the bids demonstrate that they're just very high. This project really makes this last phase of this project makes this thing make sense. Right now, the way the project ends, it hits Johnsonsville Road. Well, I believe it's Highway SR 136. And then you have to kind of wind around, and then you get over to 36. And this makes the project make sense. So from just a good governance standpoint, completing the project is good for this county. It's good for the region. It will facilitate economic growth. It will facilitate access to the regional hospital and the local community college. It facilitates access to tribal assets in the city of Susanville. It also is a primary emergency escape route for the city as well. It will provide a parallel escape route for the city and the citizens of Susanville and in the surrounding areas. It enjoys good support in the community. And my understanding is if you vote in the negative, we will lose our STIP allocation for this entire thing. A couple of just personal notes. A couple of our commissioners were vocal supporters of the creation of SB1 and the opposition to Prop 6, which deep in the state of Jefferson can be really a hazardous thing. Lassen County voted 66% in favor of getting rid of SB1, and yet these people took very dramatic, very principled stands. The amount of money we're asking for is a lot. We should never get to a place where $1.5 million doesn't seem like a lot of money. But when you sit in these chambers and you folks have made decisions about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, it isn't a lot. So, you know, we're caught in a horrible place up in Susanville. And I respect staff's recommendation because we are kind of an outlier. But this is an opportunity for folks. How many of you have actually ever been to Susanville? I'm curious. Wow, that's amazing. Very good. Usually I say Susanville and I get blank stares and crickets coming at me. So I commend you all for having visited our lovely part of the world. So anyway, those are kind of, and district supports us as well on this particular project. So it's kind of the right thing to do. It's a way for the more urban folks to reach out to the more rural parts of the state and say, hey, we know who you are. We know you have these challenges. Otherwise, we're never going to have this much money. $1.5 million in a place like Susanville in Madison County, that's like, you might as well say, it might as well be $100 million for the folks up there. And we want to finish the project. Like I said, it makes this project make sense now. Right now, it's almost a monument to like weird government. It's something we should all be trying to avoid in our lives and the way we execute these things. It's a modest proposal that would be extraordinarily helpful, and you would have, I will say this even though I cannot actually make it happen, you will have the undying gratitude of every single individual in Lassen County if you vote in favor of our request. I believe Dave Moore, by the way, as I said before, his folks have been fantastic helping us out with this particular project. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will try to be as brief as possible. Dave Moore, District 2 Director, Caltrans. This project is mostly on the state highway system. They're on Highway 36. All the benefits that were mentioned there, this does complete a connection connecting highways 139 and 36. Those two highways intersect within the city of Susanville in a very congested area, part of the downtown area. So this allows us to provide some relief to that intersection. So it helps our operations, and we've been working with the city of Susanville, Lassen County Transportation Commission for many years as they worked on this corridor to establish it, and this is the very last piece. So we support their efforts to try to fully fund this project and get this project out there on the ground. And it's not too dissimilar to what we experienced in Lassen County. We had a couple bids open this summer in Lassen County that came in higher than we anticipated as well. So, thank you. Questions?
Do we have discussion? Yes, Commissioner Arp.
So I don't want to establish, I'm going to move that we support this project, but I wanted to just double check, is there any reason legally that we can, as a commission, go ahead and approve this project? I don't want to be establishing a precedent and have everybody think that, we can do this all the time, but this is a project that's important for this community, and there's not, they're going to lose the money and they're going to lose the project. So I don't see what, I can't sit there and just let that project go by.
I'm going to call on Director Ranson to help us with the legal answer to that. I'm not in a position.
Commissioners, in your STIP guidelines, you have a guidance and essentially your expectation that these types of allocation requests would not come forward. In this case, and I think there is I may call upon Chief Deputy Director Weiss to give you a little bit of history where the commission has, it's not illegal for you to take this action. There has been a precedent in the past, just not very often. So Mitch or Teresa, do you want to take
yes.
that? She can give you a little background.
Yes, we did go back and research, and since 2006, you have approved supplementals 4 times for locally implemented projects. All the 4 that we found have the same characteristics. It's a small jurisdiction. They're in rural counties. They don't have additional funding to do the project. So this clearly fits amongst those that you have approved in the past.
Commissioner Arp and then Commissioner Gometti. I'm sorry, I look right at you and call you Commissioner Arp.
Say, Jim's talking again.
He is, and I just turned his microphone off. You guys are identical twins. Forgive me, Commissioner Alvarado.
This particular request will complete, this is the last section. I agree with Jim. This, as long as we understand that this is done, we're not going to keep, coming back to this thing. I would support.
Okay, I've got my third of 3 gems up next. Commissioner Gometti.
Thank you. I'm going to second Commissioner Arp's motion, but these small rural counties do have a lot of problems. They don't have the same flexibility as the larger MPOs. And Teresa, I hope we can work on revising the guidelines to help some of these small rural counties out. So, I would appreciate if staff take a look at that and see if we can amend our guidelines at some point in the future that cover situations like this. I think it's important. Thank you.
Any other comments?
We have the 2020 STIP in the horizon, and we will be, again, revisiting the guidelines for the 2020 STIP. We can surely look into adding something that will benefit the smaller, very small regions in the state.
Well, I'm concerned, and we had discussion yesterday about our rural communities and bidders, and if you have 1.5 contractors, you really are going to get one bid, as near as I can tell. And I think that's a challenge for all of us. But the thing that is really speaking to me, and I hope it's genuine when you say that this provides an emergency evacuation. I would have questions on why we're talking about this project when it was on the books, when Papa Joe started serving the state of California in this capacity. And, there's probably all kinds of opinions on that, but if it is truly, and Teresa, perhaps you can verify, that this would help us with an evacuation plan, I don't think any of us here in the state of California can ignore the very difficult position we are with the wildfire never-ending seasons. So if that is indeed the case, I think we're okay. Well, Commissioner Dunn wants just to speak again.
I'm going to support the motion as well, but I want to make sure that we heard clearly that it's been 4 since 2006. That's very nice that it's been 4. And so to the extent that we can make these exceptions to the rules, if we're going to re-look at guidelines, I think that sends a very strong message that, we're not going to have a lineup of these come forward. So thank you for that information.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, we have a motion. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, thank you, and no frills. Let's get it done.
Madam Chair, just a comment
Yes.
now that the vote is taken on that. There was mention made about the 2020 STIP guidelines. One of the things we're going to have to be aware of on those new guidelines is, because there's a lot of emphasis for the new guidelines to be more GHG friendly. And it's pretty urban centric in my view, a lot of the guidelines, and they may be appropriate for major areas of the state, but there are some areas of the state like this that there's just no way that you can apply you can't use a cookie cutter for all areas of the state. So we're going to have to, when we do these guidelines, we're going to have to be cognizant of some of the special needs of these rural areas that are limited in funds and have a much different world that they live in.
I would wholeheartedly agree, and I think we have heard over and over and over as we travel around the state, no one size fits all, and I think this is an example today. So, Teresa, thank you for your hard work on this, because I know you tried everything you could figure out to not have to recommend against it. So, we'll get this project completed. Okay, we'll move on now to item 83. Teresa?
Commissioners, item 83 is an action item. This is an allocation request of $450,000 for the Middle Creek Trail project in Shasta County. These funds are federal earmark from the Paul Sarbanes Transit and Parks Program. Another odd one that we found out there. This request is for PAED. There is a balance remaining of $350 that will be requested for PS&E in a future commission meeting. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Arp. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Move on to item 84. Teresa.
Item 84 is an action item. This is an allocation request of $11,200,000 for the locally administered transit project, the Capital Corridor Extension to Monterey project. This request is for segment 1 of the project, which has now been packaged into 3 segments. The other 2 segments will be pre-programmed in the 2020 STIP. This project also has $4,917,000 $837, program from Proposition 116 funds. TAMSA has agreed to place all the Proposition 116 funds on this project, on this segment, with the remainder coming from the STIP. Commissioner Arp would be happy to note that once this is approved, there will be only one project remaining in the Proposition 116 program. Staff recommends you allocate $4,917,837 from the Proposition 116 funds and $6,283,000 from STIP funds for Segment 1 of the Capital Corridor Extension to Monterey project. Staff recommends your approval.
I guess I should recommend approval. So moved, yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Commissioner Gometti.
One brief comment. It's taken us about a quarter of a century to use the Prop 116 bond money.
28 years old. It was in 1990 that was passed by the voters.
In a former life, that proposition, which was part of a gas tax increase, there was a whole package of things. That was one of the very first things I did politically to help transportation in the state. And I was a much younger person then.
Well, let's hope we pick up our pace here and aren't talking about some of our other fun projects that long. So we have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 85, Teresa.
Item 85 is an action item. This is the annual lump sum allocation request from the Public Utilities Commission for the Railroad Grade Crossing Maintenance Program for fiscal year 1920 for $3,750,000. This amount has not changed since last year. Staff has reviewed this request and finds the request consistent with statute. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay, we had a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni. I think the second came first from Commissioner Kehoe, so we'll call it that way. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 86, Teresa.
Item 86 is an action item. The Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority requests approval of a letter of no prejudice for their BART Silicon Valley Extension Phase 2 project program in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. They will be seeking reimbursement starting in fiscal year 2021 through 22-23. They are ready to proceed using local funds. This request is consistent with the LOMP guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the action. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 87, Teresa.
Item 87 is an action item. This is the financial allocation request of $32,357,000 for 4 projects included in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. Staff recommends the approval with a minor change. The change is to identify the network integration project with its unique identifier. This is more of an internal for Caltrans to identify it with a different PPNO than the other projects. And so with that, staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second from Commissioner Dunn. I heard. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion is carried. Teresa, item 88.
88, an action item. This is an allocation amendment to include multi-year funding language for 6 projects that were previously allocated and will be funded over multiple years. This is from the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. These 6 projects were allocated by the Commission at the October Commission meeting. The allocated amount does not change, and the only change is clarifying language in each of the projects that was voted to include the commitment from the state to fund the projects over multiple years. It clearly now identifies the amount of funds to be funded by fiscal year. Staff recommends the approval.
We had a motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 89, Lori.
Commissioners, item 89 is an action item. This item is to approve allocations of $12,271,000 for 17 active transportation program projects, including $962,000 in construction funds for the City of Banning's Bicycle and Safe Routes to School Improvements Project. This project will construct bicycle facilities and pedestrian improvements that will improve access to schools, employment centers, and shopping in the City of Banning. These allocation requests are consistent with ATP guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for that vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item number 90, Matthew.
Commissioners, tab 90 is an action item to approve a Solutions for Congested Corridors Program advance allocation request of $74,810,000 for the state-administered US 101 Managed Lanes Project Southern Segment in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties and on the state highway system. I want to point out that the posted agenda shows an incorrect allocation amount and that the correct amount is reflected in the change list. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with the program guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
We had a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti. I heard a second down there from Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 91, Christine.
Commissioners, tab 91 is an action item to approve allocations, which total $5,061,000 for 4 projects off the state highway system. 3 local partnership formulaic program projects in Sacramento, San Francisco, and Fresno counties, programmed in fiscal year 18-19, and 1 local partnership competitive program project in Orange County, programmed in fiscal year 18-19. Staff has reviewed the request, and the item is consistent with the local partnership program guidelines and the adopted formulaic and competitive programs. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 91.
Oh, goodness, there was a choir there. Give me one. Motion by Commissioner Dunn. Do I have a second? Commissioner, was it Kehoe? Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? The motion carries. Item 92, Christine.
Commissioners, tab 92 is an action item to approve an allocation for $1,880,000 for a local partnership formulaic program transit project in San Francisco County, programmed in fiscal year 18-19. This item has a minor change reflected in the change list. Staff has reviewed the request, and the item is consistent with the local partnership program guidelines and the adopted formulaic program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 92.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second down there. I heard from Commissioner Gilmetti. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 93, Christine.
Commissioners, tab 93 is an action item to approve an advance allocation for $5 million for a local partnership formulaic program transit project in Los Angeles County, programmed in fiscal year 19-20. Staff has reviewed the request, and the item is consistent with the local partnership program guidelines and the adopted formulaic program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 93.
Have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, or was that Tavaloni down there? Tavaloni. Okay, motion by Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 94, Don.
Tab 94 is an action item to allocate a total of $60,453,000 in TCIF, border infrastructure funds, and federal discretionary funds for the State Route 11 Enrico Fermi Drive project in San Diego County. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kehoe, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 95.
Item 95 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request of $4 million for two projects just programmed earlier in the agenda from the Proposition 1B Intercity Rail program. Staff has reviewed the request, and it is consistent with the program. Staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 96, Terry.
Commissioners, item number 96 is a department action item requesting contract award time extensions for 11 shop projects. Please note that project number 5 was pulled prior to the meeting because this contract has been awarded. Staff concurs with the requested time extensions on the remaining projects with the exception of project number 7. Staff recommends a time extension of 3 months for this project. Staff recommends commission approval of time extensions as shown on the table of staff recommendations.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
Oh, the 3-month extension,
Yes.
what was the previous time extension?
They had requested 14 months.
And you're saying yes to only 3?
To only 3, and this was based on discussions with the department.
Thank you.
So can we assume that they can live within that 3, or does that mean they're coming back?
I was informed, well, they don't get another chance to come back. They get
Oh,
the
okay.
one-time extension request.
Oh, well then.
So, bottom line is discussing with the department, they feel pretty sure that this will be awarded no later than January.
Well, 14 to 3 is a big thing. You're okay. Bruce said we're okay. Well, then don't ask for 14, Bruce. Commissioner Gometti.
This makes me nervous. We went through this with Oakland. They could have asked for more time and et cetera. So I don't know, going from 14 down to 3, if it doesn't get done, they're not going to be very happy.
I know. So come on down, Bruce, and help us understand, because I agree with Commissioner Gometti. And I'd forgotten that it was a one shot you get, so.
It was one shot. We expect to be opening bids or awarding the project rather by next week. So unless something goes wrong with that, then we're good with
Then
the
why
3
were you
months.
asking for 14?
We weren't certain that we would be in this position when we had to submit the request quite a while ago. And so now we've gotten through some hurdles, and the district, I conferred with the district director just before I had to leave to catch his plane, that they are okay with the 3 months.
I'm still nervous. I
It
would
doesn't hurt us to give the 14 and still get it done in a week.
No, we're not giving away time. We know time is money.
I would prefer something like 6 months in case they have a hiccup.
Madam Chair, what
Yes.
changed? You thought it was going to be 14 this morning, it's 3 months. What changed?
They didn't believe that the bidders that they would necessarily get sufficient bidders that would get cleared.
There's more bidders?
They cleared through the approval process more quickly than they anticipated, and they have a parent bidder that they can award to that they didn't anticipate that they'd have.
So is clearing bidders an issue that we should talk about separately? I mean, it's a big difference, Bruce, I think, and, not to make light of it, and I appreciate Commissioner Gometti and also Commissioner Kehoe says, we're all trying to keep our nose to the grind and get it done, so. Okay.
Do it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's on you.
Yes, we understand that, and the district understands that risk, but they're confident that they're in a good position.
Okay, but no more 14s when it's really could be 3, but then don't cut your nose off, 8 of it.
Giving
yeah.
you a 6-inch rope. Use it as best you can.
Okay, we're going to vote, guys. Is everybody ready? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes. Okay. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Item 97, Lori.
Commissioners, this is an action item to approve contract award time extensions for 7 active transportation program projects. The change list notes a change to project number 2, but that should actually be project number 4. 2 of these projects are located in the town of Paradise in Butte County. Caltrans recommended 12 months for this extension, for those 2 extensions, but because of the extraordinary circumstances in the town of Paradise, staff is recommending these time extensions be deferred until Paradise is able to assess their transportation needs. I would also like to add that Butte County in general and the town of Paradise specifically have been very successful in the active transportation program, both in receiving funding and delivering outstanding projects. This is due in a large part to Yvonne Garcia of Butte County Association of Governments and Mark Maddox, engineer for the town of Paradise. Both were evacuated during the Camp Fire, and I'm sad to report that Mark lost his home. Mark is a true visionary when it comes to his community's transportation needs, and staff has always appreciated BCAG's and the Town of Paradise collaborative approach to their transportation projects. I'm sure with leaders like Yvonne and Mark, Butte County will overcome this tragic event and rebuild better than ever. Staff has reviewed the 7 contract award time extensions and they are consistent with ATP guidelines, and staff recommends your approval.
Move approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Yes, Commissioner Van Konynenberg.
So the Paradise is now an unlimited extension till not to the end of 2019, because that was my concern that they might not be ready even at the end of 2019, right?
Yes, it's basically on hold.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a report back provision in that, Lori? So I understand what we're trying to do, but when will we at least get an update or something?
Yeah, I can. I'll check in with BCAG because the Town of Paradise, there's nothing there right now. So I'll check with Yvonne and see when they might have an update.
Well, I'm in, and probably no one knows at this point, but I
Right.
do think we'll talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I've had a conversation with the district chair, District 3 Director Amarjeet Benapal, and we're going to set up a date. He's going to take me up there to survey and see firsthand what they're doing. He did mention the sacrifices that's happened with some of their own staff who've lost their own homes and are still trying to get this work done. I'm sure that if there are other commissioners available on the day that's set up, that he would be happy to accommodate. I'm putting those words in his mouth, but we'll make it work if there are others that want to go.
Well, I would guess that we're going to have other transportation-related items with the whole town being destroyed. So, yeah, we'll talk about. It's great. Thank you. I, for one, would be interested. So, okay, ready for a vote? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Therese, item 98.
Item 98 is an action item. Please note, there is a replacement book item in your package for this particular item. This is a time extension request of 6 months to award a contract for a locally administered STIP project. Staff has reviewed this time extension, finds it consistent with STIP guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? The motion carries. Item 99, Teresa.
Item 99 is an action item. This is a time extension request for contract award for a locally administered STIP project in Santa Cruz County.
Staff has reviewed this time extension and recommends the commission approve 9 months. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. 100, Christine.
Commissioners, tab 100 is an action item to approve a local partnership formulaic program project allocation time extension request. Staff has reviewed the extension request, and the item is consistent with the local partnership program guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 100 as shown on the yellow time extension table.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Van Kenynenberg. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Now I'd like to open it up to public comments. Do we have any public comments? I don't see anybody coming forward, so I am going to adjourn the meeting. If I could find the